Okay guys, welcome. I'm in activity 2.2. I'm going to do a 2-point perspective drawing of the part you see here. It's in your activity. I believe it's the first one on the left. I've put the part right here so it's easy to draw. I've added two vanishing points, one on the top left and the top right. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the leading edge here, right there. And I'm going to draw that in. And I'm going to draw that 2 blocks tall. My interest is just to make this a little larger so it's a little easier to follow. So after drawing that leading edge there, I'm going to go ahead and put in some construction lines. My construction lines will go from both the top and bottom, and they will go certainly to each vanishing point. So by doing this, I can instantly get a sense of perspective. Notice the further away it is, it's getting smaller. That's what perspective does. Isometric literally means same measurement. So in an isometric drawing, these would have to be the same width the whole way. I'm going to go ahead now and work on this front face here because I can start laying that out. Before I do that, as I draw this line in over here, I'm going to have to determine where it stops. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and add some construction lines. I'm going to guesstimate that it will come to here. And I'll go ahead and add that front face in real quick and then talk about how I'm going to make my next construction line. So that would be an object line. This will go straight up. That's representing that edge right there. And then that will come back like this. Now I'm going to have to add some construction lines, and I need to do that, so I'm going to break this into thirds. Now, they're not going to be equal thirds because it's not isometric. The first third is going to be larger than the second third, and the second third will be larger than the third third. So if you look what I've done here, this distance right here is larger than that distance, which is larger than that distance. That is a perspective drawing. I'm going to go ahead and add one there because I know I'll need it later. And then I'm going to go ahead and divvy up the same on the other side. The first third I'm going to make the largest. The second third I'm going to make a little smaller. And the third third I'm going to make the smallest because it's the furthest away. Now, there's not a real mathematical formula to how I'm doing this. It's kind of a guesstimation, and I'm filling it in. So it's not as exact. It's much more artistic than a technical drawing, an isometric, where everything is so measured and careful. I'm going to go ahead and add this face now with some object lines. So I know that's going to go to that third because it's a third of the way up, and then its edge will go straight up. And in this program, it's kind of snappy. That is to say, it'll tend to grab to the orthographic, meaning the X and Y components. But that's going to put that on there. This now is going to go a third of the way across. If I were to put in a glass box and look down from the top, I noticed that determining how far this line here goes up, it would go 1/3 of the way. And I have that 1/3 marked below. So if I were to come where that intersects the bottom of that point and extend a line straight up, I know that this object line would go that far. And notice that is a shorter distance than this. Even though it is the same distance on the isometric, it's going to be smaller on this one because it's farther away. I'm going to then use a couple of other vertical lines going off my thirds. For instance, I know that this is 1/3 of the way from the left and 1/3 of the way from the right. So that is going to determine where this line ends. I'd run into that yellow line on that construction line. So that's how I'm going to determine how far that distance is. The same thing is going to go when I want to make this distance. I can determine that by drawing a line up from this one because that represents 1 cube on the bottom. So that's how far I'm going to come up from this point right here to put that, and notice I'm on that construction line. So notice that this distance in real life is the same distance as that, and I should perhaps adjust that just a tiny bit so it's on that construction line a little bit better. But that allows me to determine those distances. It's getting smaller the further it is away. All right, now at this point I can go ahead and add this line in pretty comfortably, and that's going to go back, and the question of course is how far, and this line would go straight up to there, so I can visualize that extending up there. I could add a construction line, but I feel relatively comfortable adding that in like that, and there's already construction lines running so close to parallel to that that I feel comfortable. Let me undo that line there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this line going, again, there's a construction line from the bottom. I know it's not technically the one I'd want, but I can, and I'm going to clean that up just a tiny bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that line. I know that this line that runs between those 2 points is just going to simply connect the dots, so I can add that in. I then can extend vertically from that, looking to put this cube on there. So I will not go quite as tall as I did on this one because, again, it's further away. And we won't get into technical governance of that, but I'm going to go what I feel would be appropriate. The first one was 2 blocks, so I'm going to do this about 1.5. And if I'm accurate, the construction line that I'll draw from this point to the vanishing point would govern that. So the top of that line again would be governed by a construction line extending, and then how far I go back here, again, that's not the easiest thing to draw, certainly. I'm going to go ahead and just add it in. It's going to be smaller. I'll add a construction line to help me make this object line. And again, it's getting smaller and smaller. Then this is going to extend all the way down to the ground is defined by this line here. If you look carefully, that point right there, it is 1 block in and extending all the way down. Well, this is the line that is 1 block in, and it extends all the way down. And it extends straight down, so I'm just going to come down until I hit that line. Again, that's 2 blocks worth, and it's barely bigger than the 1 block up front, but it is further behind, so it's going to be smaller. At this point, I think I'm pretty much done. I don't have to put any tonal shading on this, or at least I wouldn't know how to in this drawing, but you can see that I've got all of the lines included, and then rather than these diagonal lines being parallel, which means they'll be the same measurement, which is what isometric means for an infinite amount of projection, these are actually going to vanish when they reach the top left and top right corners. So this would be a 2-point perspective drawing.